Just by virtue of where I'm at in my career, many years in the industry, and kind of like my age now as far as being a real estate agent is concerned, I find myself in a position where a lot of agents and people are asking me market advice, how things are going in the business, what to do to make themselves more successful. One of the biggest topics of discussion that I feel like I've been talking about so much the last few weeks has been the National Association of Realtors settlement of the lawsuit in regards to buyer's agent commissions and whether or not sellers should be forced to, required to, or even should pay those commissions out of their bottom line as opposed to buyers paying for their own commissions. Not the norm in the market. And so a lot of people think that it's required for a seller to pay both a seller's agent commission and a buyer's agent commission.
Pony up the cash and she's yours.
And that's actually the crux of the whole situation. It's never ever been required for a seller to pay a commission of any kind. You can sell your house yourself. You can do it on the internet with Zillow and other places like that, forsalebyowner.com and so on and so forth.
So on and so forth, etc. ad nauseum.
It's never been required that you actually pay a buyer's agent. The reason that I think that we're in the situation that we're in right now is because sometimes sellers would ask agents over the last literally century that we've been doing it like this, why do I have to pay both you and the amount of money that's going to go toward the buyer's agent? And the answer was extremely commonly, buyer's agents won't show your house and therefore you will have a harder time selling it. And that's the wrong answer. It's always been the wrong answer.
Sorry, that's the wrong answer.
And I think one of the benefits of this whole court case is that yes, it's going to shake up the industry and yes, it's going to change a few things, especially in regards to how we do business, but sellers are going to be better informed as to why they pay a commission. That answer is dead wrong. There may have been a time in the past, and there may have been markets in the past or even currently where that's true, but generally speaking, buyers are going to find out about your listing by virtue of the fact that you put it on the multiple listing service, which then syndicates to websites that they look at, such as Redfin and Zillow. So your house will never be secret.
Keep it secret.
Irrespective of what type of a commission you're offering a buyer's agent. Apparently in July, it won't even be advertised to other agents whether or not you're willing to pay a buyer's agent commission. So that goes away as far as problems are concerned, but it wasn't really a problem anyways because it's pretty transparent as to what houses are for sale and what aren't. Wrong answer, right? So what would have been a better answer that could have been given over the years that would have actually avoided this whole mess? I think number one is, what is a buyer's agent responsibility? Their primary function is not to find a buyer a house. When I started 22 years ago, a lot of my job actually was looking for houses on the multiple listing service and then bringing those opportunities to my client and then showing them those houses prior to the syndication of all listings all over the internet and automated searches that actually email properties to clients upon literally being listed. So prior to all that was a big function of the job, but it's not anymore.
Not anymore! No!
Now it's actually much more critical and much more technical, but super, super valuable still. Number one, a buyer's agent is going to look at a property for you and they're going to be able to actually give you real analysis on that property and what it's worth and what it will take to actually win in a multiple offer situation. Or if it's not a multiple offer situation, they're going to advise you as to what is a fair price for that property based on data, comparable sales, and adjustments to how those comparable sales are different than the house you're trying to offer on. And the reason that's valuable is because you want to know going into a contract whether or not the price that you're paying is actually a suitable fair market value price for it.
How much do you want?
Another function that buyer's agents bring to the table, reviewing, understanding, and helping convey the information that you're reading in your inspections. When a home buyer reads inspections, there's a lot of stuff in there that might be confusing, might be scary, or might be underreported, and your buyer's agent can point all those things out. And one of the biggest values is that a buyer's agent can actually say to you as a buyer, say, hey, look, I saw this thing in the inspection, you may have seen it too, and I think we need further inspection upon that.
One day, a man might be an inspector.
That's a hugely valuable thing that you're not gonna have without a buyer's agent, right? Buyer's agents help write the offers. Writing the offers is not just filling in the blanks, it's also understanding the market and the market dynamics and how the offer needs to be structured in such a way that a seller is going to want to accept it, especially if there's multiple offers on the table. These are benefits to the buyer, right? So why would a seller pay for that? And here's a couple of reasons. Number one is if a buyer comes to the table with representation that has educated them properly, that process is going to be infinitely more smooth. And I can promise you that if you're a seller and you don't want to pay a buyer's agent, you're going to find that an unrepresented buyer is a disaster for everybody. And it's going to be a disaster in two different ways. Number one is the process itself is going to be very hectic.
Oh, you know the thing about chaos.
The buyer's not going to know when to do what. They're not going to understand the paperwork. They're not going to understand the inspections. They're not going to understand the disclosures. Some will, but in general, it's not going to be a good process during the escrow period. Could take longer, could fall apart. The market could change and actually could cost you money.
Lost all my money.
Having good representation can avoid those problems. But also, an unrepresented or underrepresented buyer is also more prone to not understanding the property that they're buying. And as a result, they may not understand the defects and any other problems or issues the property might have. They may very well have been willing to accept those problems and defects had they understood them, but they didn't even understand them or know about them, bought the property anyways. Well, guess what? That is going to open everyone up for a lawsuit, which includes you as the seller. So having a really well-represented buyer will actually potentially keep you out of court in the future. And nobody wants to sell a house and then 3 or 4 or 5 years later end up having to go back into that transaction and deal with it again. You want to get your money, you want to move on. Hiring a buyer's agent actually is like an insurance policy that's going to help make sure that that happens. When agents have been asked, why do we pay for that as the seller? Why do we pay for that buyer's agent commission? The answer should have been, well, let's look at the alternatives of paying that. Another alternative is a buyer will pay their agent themselves. That may not look very good for you as a seller either, which is maybe surprising to many people, but a buyer usually wants to buy a house once they've saved up enough money for the down payment. And that down payment is a percentage of the purchase price of the property. And in many cases, it's 20%. So if a buyer has saved up their 20%, they then find out that they actually have to pay their buyer's agent because you as a seller are not willing to pay that. That could lower their down payment from 20 down to 17.5%, which wildly changes the dynamics of their loan scenario, which increases their interest rate, causes them to have mortgage insurance, all of which bring down their pre-approval, which brings down how much they can afford to pay for the house. That 2.5% that they are paying out of their pockets in cash can change how much they can borrow by a lot more than that. It can be even 5 or 10%. You could be essentially stepping over dollars in order to pick up dimes. If you're somebody that's looking to buy a house, there's a lot of things that I just said that should give you a lot of certainty when it comes to needing a buyer's agent, because they will absolutely help in so many ways and provide value in and above what they cost. If you're a seller, I would highly recommend considering the option of putting out there a 2.5% commission if asked, because I think you'll find that you'll get better offers and you'll have a much smoother process and you'll have a lot less likelihood of finding yourself in court. It makes sense from the buyer's standpoint and it makes sense from the seller's standpoint.
Do you mind if I give you some professional advice?
If you're a buyer's agent, all of the things that I just said right now, you need to get really, really good at conveying those to your possible buyers. And if you're a listing agent, you need to get really, really good at explaining what I just explained to your sellers so that they go into the decision-making process of figuring out whether or not they want to pay a buyer's side commission. They want to have all the information possible. And some of the things that I touched on this video, I think are really good things that you could bring up to those sellers so that they can make an informed decision and make the right decision that will allow them to sell their property for the highest possible price and have the smoothest possible process.